Kids who were born during the Invincible season are now adults. That sentence alone tells you everything about the weight of what Tuesday night meant. They grew up supporting Arsenal without ever seeing their club crowned champions of England. They watched other teams lift the trophy season after season. They heard the jokes, felt the near misses, lived through the collapses and kept coming back. And then at the Vitality Stadium on a Tuesday evening in May, with Bournemouth holding Manchester City to a draw, 22 years ended at once. But before we talk about what Arsenal have become, we have to be honest about what they were, because the distance between the two is the real story. For 3 consecutive seasons before this one, Arsenal finished second. Think about what that actually does to a football club psychologically. 1 second-place finish can hurt. 2 consecutive ones can damage confidence in ways that are difficult to repair. 3 straight years of falling just short tests absolutely everything. The players, the manager, the supporters, the entire structure of belief that a title-winning team needs to function. And the 2022 to 2023 season left the deepest wound. Arsenal spent 232 days at the top of the Premier League table that year. 232. And still did not win it. That number became a weapon. Every subsequent stumble was connected back to it. Every tight game in a title run produced the same question from outside and eventually from inside too. Is this Arsenal going to do it again? What makes Arteta's achievement this season genuinely historic is not just the trophy. It is what he had to dismantle before he could build what delivered it. When he arrived in December 2019, Arsenal were not a club in transition. They were a club that had lost its identity entirely. The squad lacked structure. The dressing room looked fractured. The standards that Arsene Wenger had spent 22 years building had collapsed under the weight of a succession problem that no one had prepared properly for. Arteta was 37 years old, had never managed professionally, and was walking into one of the most scrutinised jobs in English football. There were serious questions about whether he was ready. The symmetry that multiple analysts identified this season is almost too precise to be coincidence. Under Wenger, Arsenal finished second in 3 consecutive seasons before winning the title. Under Arteta, Arsenal also finished second in 3 consecutive seasons before winning the title. One model followed the blueprint of the other, separated by more than 2 decades, with the second man having been coached by the first. That is not accident. That is a process. Painful while you are living inside it, vindicated when you reach the other side. And the numbers that Arsenal produced this season tell you this was not the product of fortune or a particularly forgiving schedule. They were the best team in Europe at preventing dangerous chances, finishing with the lowest expected goals against figure across all 5 major European leagues. Not just England, all of Europe. That figure, combined with the 8.2 shots conceded per game and 2.4 shots on target per game, places Arsenal in a category that has not been seen in English football since the great defensive teams of the City era. The difference is that Guardiola's defensive records were built over multiple seasons with a settled back 4. Arteta built his with a right-back position that was improvised across 3 different players for the final stretch of the season. William Saliba and Gabriel Magalhaes are the foundation underneath all of it. Together, they were as close to an impenetrable pairing as English football produced this season. Their clean sheet frequency with both of them starting together was 15 from 26 games, 1 every 1.7 matches. Opponents stopped trusting themselves to score against them. There were nights this season where Arsenal scored once and the game felt over, not because the football was dominant, but because no one believed anyone could break through what Saliba and Gabriel represented. 2 players, completely different in personality, in physicality, in how they communicate their defending, and yet completely complementary when they are on the pitch together. That partnership is the backbone of everything Arteta built. David Raya's inclusion was the decision that divided opinion most sharply when it was made, and which looks most completely vindicated now. Replacing Aaron Ramsdale with a goalkeeper who had been on loan for a season, in a position where stability is considered sacred, felt like a gamble that carried real risk. What Arteta saw was not just a goalkeeper. He saw a different way of playing out from the back, a different level of calmness under pressure in moments when other goalkeepers might rush or miscommunicate. 3 consecutive Golden Gloves, 19 clean sheets equaling David Seaman's Arsenal record, 1 away from the all-time individual record in the competition. Arteta was right again, and the scale of being right about that specific decision is something that deserves to be stated plainly. The set-piece transformation is the story that gets discussed least relative to how much it contributed. For years, Arsenal were poor from corners and dead ball situations. This season, they were terrifying. 18 corner goals, a new Premier League record. Opponents looked genuinely nervous every time Arsenal won a corner in the final third. Every movement rehearsed, every blocker in position, every runner with a specific assignment. Nicolas Jova built a system that the entire division spent a season studying and could not solve. That level of preparation does not happen by accident. It is the product of a head coach who is obsessive about the details of the game in a way that opponents always underestimate until they have faced it repeatedly. But perhaps the most important transformation was the one that happened in tight games. Previous Arsenal teams needed to be comfortable to function. When matches became ugly or tense or the rhythm broke down, something inside the squad would shift. A mistake would trigger panic. A setback would damage momentum. The emotional fragility was real, and it cost points in exactly the games that decided previous title races. Collapses at West Ham over Christmas, limp defeats at Everton, drawn games against teams that Arsenal should have controlled. This season's 53 points against bottom half opposition is the number that tells you most clearly how that changed. 17 wins from 19 games against the teams below halfway. An average of 2.8 points per game, significantly better than City's 2.3 against the same opponents. They became ruthless in the specific area where they had previously been most vulnerable. 8 wins by a 1-0 scoreline, their highest total since 1998 to 1999. 3 of their last 4 victories by that margin. Rival supporters spent the season using the scoreline as a criticism, as evidence that Arsenal were grinding rather than dominating. What they were actually describing was a team that had learned how to suffer, that could absorb pressure, defend a lead, and reach the final whistle without falling apart. That is not a style criticism. That is a description of champion mentality. The glamour arrives in the open games, the Champions League nights, the moments when everything is flowing. The title is won in the 1-0 afternoons when nothing is flowing and you find a way anyway. The response to the Manchester City defeat in April is the clearest single piece of evidence for the mental transformation. That result felt like a season-defining moment in the wrong direction. In previous years, a result like that, with the timing it carried, would have been the beginning of a collapse. 4 consecutive wins after it, 4 consecutive clean sheets. Arsenal locked down completely at the precise moment when everything could have unravelled. That sequence did not just keep the title race alive, it proved that this squad had become something previous versions were not. A team that could absorb a defining setback and come out the other side stronger. Victor Gyökeres, finishing the season with 14 league goals, was used as a criticism by those who wanted to make a case against Arsenal's quality. Football history offers the correction. Frank Lampard scored 13 for Chelsea in 2004 to 2005 as their top scorer in the title-winning season. İlkay Gündoğan scored 13 for City in 2021. Gyökeres goes into the final day level with Eric Cantona's 14 for Manchester United in 1995 to 1996. The champions in each of those seasons were built around systems and collective contributions, not individual goal tallies. Gyökeres delivered in big moments and in the pressure situations that required composure over volume. The system around him scored the rest. That is how Arteta builds teams. Now look at the landscape around Arsenal and understand what this title means beyond the immediate moment. Manchester City are entering the Guardiola succession. Liverpool are rebuilding under pressure. United remain structurally unstable. Chelsea persist through cycles of ownership-driven uncertainty, and Arsenal have Arteta, who is 44 years old and still developing as a manager. Saka, who is 22. Saliba, who is 23. Rice, entering the peak years of his career. The core of this team does not just have one title left in it. This looks like the beginning of something sustained rather than a single exceptional season arriving after a long wait. Wenger spoke after the confirmation about Arsenal remaining true to themselves, about patience, about trusting a long-term vision. In modern football, patience is genuinely rare. Projects are abandoned after one difficult campaign. Managers are dismissed before their ideas have time to fully develop. Arsenal trusted Arteta through the three second-place finishes, through the criticism, through the summers when the pressure to change something was real. That institutional trust is now being described as one of the most important decisions Arsenal's ownership has made in years. Because the alternative, changing the manager after any one of those three near misses, would have reset the entire project, and the title that arrived this season would have gone to someone else. 22 years, three consecutive runners-up finishes, 232 days at the top in a season that still ended without the trophy, and then this. Not because Arsenal were flawless, not because they avoided difficulty or got the easy schedule or rode their luck throughout, but because they evolved. Because Arteta built something that learned from each failure and came back with the specific solution for the problem that had caused the failure. The nearly team is gone. The waiting is over. Arsenal are champions again.